Hello and welcome to the Cat Knits podcast. I'm Kat or Catherine, and this is a monthly knitting podcast where I chat all about the knitting I've been up to in the past month. We're now at the end of May, so I'm going to chat about my May knits. I can't believe we're almost at the beginning of summer, which is fantastic. If you're new here, I'm currently, or maybe it's been a while, I'm currently pregnant. I'm quite pregnant, so I'm now, I think I'm in my final month of pregnancy, so this episode, it's going to be quite a few children and baby knits. Actually, quite a few. It's going to be all children and baby knits. I'm currently trying to just squeeze in the last few projects before the baby is born, and then I can work on some more adult-sized knits again. But as I was cruising through Ravelry, I actually came across a pattern that I wanted to share, and it's an emotional support chicken. So when I'm on Ravelry, I like to sort by most popular patterns, and typically that listing doesn't really change that much, but within the top kind of 10 or 20, the first page of popular patterns, there was this emotional support chicken. So I was checking it out. It's actually quite adorable. So there's all these different chickens, and then people have named them like little plays on people. So the person who created the pattern, she calls hers Lindsay Lohan, and they're about this big, and they're knit with a worsted weight yarn, and you can kind of use your scraps because I think you only need like 1 to 2 balls, so like 100 to 200 grams of worsted weight yarn to knit one of these chickens. And there's some that was, so Iris Apperfell, I think her name was. She's that New York woman in her 90s who was kind of taking over like a style. She's got amazing style. So someone made her into a chicken and did the like glasses. And then I saw some with like little afros. Some people did little mini chickens, like bright rainbow chickens, all sorts of cute little chickens. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you in case you're looking for something fun to knit over the summer. I would like to knit a chicken. I just got to go through my stash yarn. That isn't something that I'm gonna buy new yarn for, and I don't typically knit a lot of worsted weight projects, but I'm just staring actually. So my yarn boxes are within eyesight, so I was just staring at them. They're opaque though, so I can't see what's inside, but I'd love to. I think I'm gonna have to cast on one of those chickens because they're adorable. Okay, so for things that I actually did do in the past month, I got 2 projects done, which I'm excited about. So the first one is what I think is quite possibly the cutest thing ever, and that is the lace dress body by Knitting for Olive. So I knit this in Sunday Fibre Co., which is a local yarn. It is a sock yarn that I chose. This is their barefoot organic sock. It's hand dyed in the Lower Mainland, which is just really close by to me. It's an organic merino with a eco-friendly recycled nylon. It's super soft. It's 3-ply, 20% nylon, 80% superwash, or is it superwash merino? No, it just says merino. It says it's all eco superwash though, so I'm not sure exactly what that means, but this is how much I had left. So last episode I was talking about how I was a little nervous, so this is actually 2 grams of yarn. So the pattern, all of the Knitting for Olive patterns, since they do want you to use their yarns, they, rather than telling you the yardage, they tell you how many balls of their yarn that they need. So in this case, it said that I needed 500 meters, but I only got, which is 100 grams, but I decided to just buy 1 of these. These are actually a lot less meterage than the Knitting for Olive. This has 384 meters. So you can see why I might have been worried, and I think I did have a good reason to be worried, but it's great because it all worked out. I think last time I showed this to you guys, I had finished the body and I was just here, and it really didn't take that much longer just to finish off the top half. The one thing I do love about this little lace dress is the finishing that happens along the edges. So it's all of the edges are done with like an I-cord. Where should I put my stuff? There, I'll put it there. they're all done. They're kind of, all the edges you pick up and then you do an I-cord edging, but you do a little gap between. So you pick up, you do a couple rows of knitting, and then you do the I-cord. And I just think it makes the little dress absolutely adorable. It also ties into the little welt that you do just above joining the lace dress with the body. I'm very impressed and excited about this yarn. It's very soft and we'll see how it wears up. I also love the kind of, this color was her March colorway of the month. She's actually going to do another one for June, I believe, which is going to come out, I think, next week. I think she's doing like colorways of the month to celebrate her 5-year business anniversary. It's one of her business anniversaries. I think it's 5 years. She typically does a lot of pastel yarns, which was perfect for this little dress. This pattern was a lot of fun to knit. It was a little bit, I find the knitting for olive patterns, they're kind of halfway. I'd say they're pretty understandable, but not as understandable as other patterns. They definitely have a lot of ends to weave in so far. That's been my experience. So I had a bagillion ends to weave in for this project. I think when I say a bagillion, I think that there was probably 20 to 30 ends to weave in. But I absolutely love the way it turned out. It's cute that what they do is they have, at the very end here, you can see I got these adorable little heart pearl buttons. I got these from a local yarn store in Vancouver. I got them from Urban Yarns where I used to work. You can't unfortunately buy their buttons online, but they have a great selection if you are from the Lower Mainland. But you do a little crochet chain. I don't have a crochet hook. I've been meaning to buy one. But what I do is I just use my needle and I just, you know, do it that way. It's a little more frustrating, but it does still work, and then you don't have to buy a crochet hook. But that, I think, is because babies typically have massive heads. I think I want to say their heads are almost 2/3 the size of a human head. So this is great for slipping it on. And then it's got 3 little buttons down here. Unfortunately, they only had 2 of the heart buttons left. So then I did another heart one for the center, and then like a round one. And then the pattern says 4 buttons, but I did 3 buttons. So this is the 0 to 3 month old size. And I figured for the 0 to 3 month old size, I only really needed 3 buttons along the bottom. So I just adjusted the pattern accordingly and put the 1 button in the middle and then the other 2 on the I-cord edge. I didn't make any modifications to the pattern. I used German short rows for the short rows for the diaper bum. That just tends to be my go-to short row. I prefer it over wrap and turns. Though I have used wrap and turns, I like wrap and turns for garter stitch just because I find it hides it really well. But when I'm doing stockinette, I do prefer the German short rows just because I think that you can't see where they are too much. I mean, you can see that there is definitely that extra fabric being created, but I think they really do blend in. So the short rows just basically create extra fabric, and that extra fabric, it creates like almost like a triangle of extra fabric. And so that extra fabric in this case is used for the diaper bum, and there you can kind of see it just naturally causes the garment to curve. So overall, this was a lot of fun to knit. It was pretty entertaining, I think, because it was constantly changing. I've knit their ruffle dress, which was ruffle romper, sorry, which was also very cute. But that one I found a little more boring, I think, because it's basically the same shape as this, but rather than having this like lace dress, right here you have a little ruffle, or actually the ruffle goes all the way around. It's very adorable. I was actually looking at it thinking that maybe I should knit that next, possibly, but we'll see. For that, I think you do need, if I remember correctly, more than 1 skein of fingering weight yarn. I think you need 2, which I don't have. So we'll see. But yeah. Oh, Someone's at the door. 1 second. Well, that actually worked out pretty well that I was home because it was Apple dropping off my husband's new laptop. So that worked out. But yeah, anyways, last thing I just wanted to say about this adorable little dress is that it goes up to 2 years. So if you're thinking about making one, yeah, absolutely loved it. The other finished object that I have is this itty bitty pretty sweater. Oh, here it is, which I knit in the 6-month-old size. So my goal before the baby is born is to have a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, 1-year project. So that was my 6-month, and then I earlier finished the 9-month project, which is I did Ellen's coming home set, which I'm actually gonna show briefly, and then this is the 6-month project, and this is the itty bitty pretty sweater, and this is by Maison Dene, I believe her name is, and this is another fingering weight project. So this is knit with a 3.5mm needle. I think this was a tighter gauge. I think this is like a 2, maybe a 3mm needle. I'm not quite sure. So this is definitely a little bit of a looser gauge. And then for this, I knit it with Life in the Long Grass, and this, I believe, is, this type of yarn is called Moon. There's no colorway actually on the label itself, but this is a 20% silk, 80% superwash merino. It is ridiculously soft, and that silk gives it that nice little shine. So you can see I have quite a bit more of this left over. And I finished it, which is awesome, and I'm excited about. Oh, oops, I just caused things to go flying. That's okay. This is my 3rd time knitting this pattern. It's a raglan. The nice thing about this is it does have short rows at the top, which I think is great for when fitting, you know, humans. We need the short rows because they give us a little extra length. And for the raglan, it just, you do yarn overs, which gives that beautiful little lace detail. And then there's like a lace panel in the front that you kind of continue all the way. Again, I used German short rows for this just because that, I tend to like that kind of short row. And then whenever I do baby projects, I never knit gauge swatches. I just go with it. So after finishing this, I was like, huh, this is kind of big. So I pulled out my 6 to 9 month project, which is, this is the Ellen's coming home suit. And if you look, I might argue that the 6-month is almost identical to the 9-month in size. I mean, I was thinking about this and I was like, I guess human sizes are the same way, where depending on the designer, you know, or the store, the sizes are all kind of different. And then I was looking at this pattern and just seeing like how the size changes, because she does a schematic for all the sizes, because I think this one goes up to 6 years old and kind of starts at 6 months, I believe. And so I was looking at how many inches, and turns out that there's really, the sweater doesn't get that much wider as you go all the way from like 6 months to 6 years. Like I think there's only maybe like a 3-inch difference between those two sizes. And then every year you might have like a 1/2 inch change in width. So long story short, the sizes all, they're all, you know, they're gonna fit at some point. Who knows when they're actually gonna fit. So anyways, this is my 6-month-old project and this is my 9-month-old project, but I think really they both are gonna fit at the exact same time because they are the exact same size, and that's fine. This pattern, I didn't do any modifications. I did use that technique that I've kind of talked about a couple times for the underarms. And it's just basically, I use this now for every single underarm I do, which is I pick up 1 extra stitch between the stitches that I'm supposed to pick up, which are kind of on that cast off edge, which is like this edge. And then, and between the the live stitches, so I'd have like these stitches all on a needle, then I'd have these ones cast off here. So you kind of pick up along here and then you go back to, you connect to your live stitches, and in that gap I'll pick up an extra stitch on either side, and then on the next round I will knit through the back loop through that stitch and the stitch next to it, that's the live stitch, just to really kind of tighten any holes, and then I just find you get awesome armpits. This is actually a YouTube tutorial that I got from Susan BRYAN, I believe her name is, which I'll link below. I think I've mentioned it quite a few times because it's my go-to technique for underarms. And then the other thing I did was when I did the cast off for the sleeves, I did a stretchier cast off. So rather than doing the classic cast off where you pull the last stitch over, like you knit one, knit another one, pull the other stitch over the next, and you just keep doing that. Every other time you go to bind off a stitch, you knit the 2 stitches together. So you knit one, knit the next one, then knit those past 2 stitches together, then knit another one, then pull that stitch over, knit another one, knit 2 stitches together. I'll link it below. One thing you may notice is that I'm now, this is my goal for a long time, but every project that I talk about, I'm now going to actually link to my Ravelry page, because I'm going to have a Ravelry page per project. So I am very bad at documenting my knitting and keeping up with it. So I've decided that this is kind of just at least one way that everything I talk about, I'm going to try to have one photo of it and a project associated with it, with like the yarn details and things like that. Excuse me. Oh. Excuse me. So yeah, so that's the kind of the stretchier bind off that I did there. For the bottom, I just did the classic bind off just because this is already, I think, nice and big and won't be a problem. It'll just be a problem getting their little hands into this. So, and then I've got short row shaping, which I think is awesome. But yeah, this is a great little pattern. So far the yarn is doing great. This is my first time, or my second time knitting with silk. This was my first time knitting with silk, which wasn't too long ago. So I'm curious, I don't know how silk is gonna wash or wear. It's supposed to be stronger, it's supposed to add strength and add a little bit of coolness and also add like shine and drape. So far, yeah, I'm enjoying it, I'm liking it. This pattern has also been a win. I mean, this is my 3rd time doing it, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. I just think it's simple and cute. I absolutely love a variegated yarn on a baby outfit, especially like just plain stockinette. I think the variegated yarn really ups the cuteness factor. So I was happy to get that project done. And then the next project I started is actually another Knitting for Olive project, and last time I showed the yarn that I got. So this is the Anemone Sweater by Knitting for Olive, and as you can see, it's a all over colorwork sweater that has these, I think they're almost like tulips, these rows of tulips, and you do the flower in different colors every time. And I specifically ordered yarn for this project because I saw it and I just fell in love. So for this, I ordered my first ever mini set. So the yarn that I did the onesie in, this was my test of the Sunday Fibre Co yarn. She had a special, like a pre-order special dye, which she called True Colors. And so I ended up ordering some of that yarn after loving knitting with that. So I ordered her mini kit, and with the mini kit I'm planning to do all of the flowers. So you can see here, these are going to be my petal colors. I'm kind of going for like pastel-y, and then this is going to be my leaf color, which I think goes really well. So I chose 5, I guess these are six minis, so 6 of the 10. The other 4 I found were just a little more bright and just didn't quite fit in with the vibe I'm going. So I think each of these really pairs well with this kind of like chartreuse green. I also got a full 100 grams of this chartreuse green, so I figure if I have any worries about running out of yarn, I can easily just pull from that larger skein. Whereas these, I'm definitely not gonna run out of yarn. So she says you need about like 2 or 3 grams per row of color. So, you know, if I'm running low, I can always just either just use a new color, but it's not going to happen because I'm only going to end up using maybe you know, 4 grams of each color, depending on how many times I have to repeat it. This is the one that I'd be worried about running out of yarn, because I think she says that you do need 20 grams for it. So with this guy, okay, so that's the that's what I chose for the color work. And then for the body, I chose this cream yarn. So the minis are in a sock yarn, the same sock yarn. So it's like a 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. And then I chose a different sock yarn. And this is Amble by the FIBRE Co. And this has a little bit of alpaca in it, if I remember, yeah. So it's 70% wool, 20% alpaca, and 10% nylon. And just like the Sunday FIBRE Co., it's a little bit of a heavier, shorter fingering. So this is for 100 grams, you get 325 meters. So typical sock yarns, I would say, are like 400 meters, and this is 325. So it is a thicker yarn, and because of the alpaca, it's a little bit softer, it should be warmer, and then it also has a bit of a halo to it. And the reason why I chose this yarn is because actually, for this pattern, you're supposed to hold a fingering weight yarn with a mohair. And I just decided, no, that's too much yarn for a tiny little sweater. I would rather just do a single strand of fingering. So I chose thicker fingerings. The Knitting for Olive fingering is quite a light fingering, so that's the one I was talking about, which I think is like 500 meters for 100 grams. So both of these are more in the like kind of, you know, sub 400 range. And since the white has the alpaca, you kind of get a little bit of that halo to it. And I think it's a good substitution. I do think it is maybe perhaps my stitches are a little bit looser. Like it just doesn't quite, so this is a 4mm needle that I'm knitting with, whereas when I did the Itty Bitty Pretty Sweater, this was a 3.5mm needle. So I am going up, you know, 1 more needle size, and the yarn I would actually say the Amble is a little bit thicker than this yarn. But I did go up half needle size, but it is also color work, and color work does tend to be smaller. It tends to like be a denser knit. So I think the substitution is working out pretty good. Part of me wants to block this to see how the stitches are going to grow and if I am going to still be happy with it. But just from looking at it, I'm really happy with how it's turning out. It is a little bit lower contrast than what I was expecting. I think I thought that the green would and the pink would be more like punchy. It's kind of a little bit more like Easter, which is cute in its own way. I actually wanted this to be like her first birthday sweater. So speaking of sizes, I originally had planned to knit the 1-year size, like I said, but then when I looked at my other 2, you know, sweaters that I think are now both 9-month-old, and then I looked at how many stitches I'd cast on for the 1-year size, I realized, and I got quite far, I got like all the way up to here, and then I measured it against the Itty Bitty Pretty Sweater, and I was just noticing that, you know, it was a very similar number of stitches. Although I'd gone up with needle size, it really wasn't feeling that much bigger. So I ended up ripping out the 1-year-old size, and then I cast on the 2-year-old size. And now it is looking like 1 inch bigger, which is great. I would just love to have basically different sized sweaters, just so that I don't use up all of my hand knits at once and then don't have any left that fit her. So I did decide to go up to the 2-year-old size. I did want this to be her kind of like first birthday sweater, but I think it's going to be probably too big for that, but it's better that I have something that's in a different size, in my opinion. So it's probably honestly about an inch wider, which is great. I think an inch wider is going up at least a year, if not a little bit more than that. We'll see. Of course, you never know how fast your children are going to grow or anything like that. So who knows, but I did go up to the 2-year-old size, and I'm curious to see if she'll fit into it in 2 years. Who the heck knows? But this has been fun to knit. It's been fun to do a little bit of color work charts. There are some longer floats in the pattern, which I don't really love. And of course, there's going to be lots of ends to weave in. So I think I am going to, between each row, I am cutting the green and then weaving that in. And then as you can see from the floats, there's like some 5-stitch floats, which I'm kind of saying 5 stitches is the maximum that I'll carry the yarn. So it could be kind of easy it might be hard for her to put this on and off without possibly sticking her hands in the floats, but this should be really warm, which is great. And I think it also should be pretty darn cute. So this is my first time ever using minis, and I think this is actually a great use for them because I've always seen them and kind of thought, oh, well, they're very adorable, but what the heck am I going to knit with them? So doing little bits of color work in a sweater seems like a fun use of them. So yeah, after I finish this, I'll kind of have what I was hoping to have. So this is kind of going to be my main focus for June, as well as I did want to knit a couple hats, I think. We'll see. We'll see, because she'll be born in the summer, so she doesn't really need wool hats. So those were my goal projects, and then I did cast on, another project that I was just doing for fun. And that, oh yeah, I just wanted to show, so this was another project that I've knit that you can see is significantly bigger than this. So this is the R&R hoodie, and this was the 6 to 12-month-old size, and this is the 6-month-old size. And this one you can see is significantly bigger than the little sweater. Now you might be saying, what about gauge? Maybe your gauge is off, and that could definitely be true. I did measure this sweater, and it's very close to what was the suggested width. Like I think all the lengths, because when you knit these sweaters, they just say how long the whole body should be before you stop. So all the lengths are correct. It would just be the width that might be off. And when I measured this, I think it was only maybe like it was probably like half an inch wider. But in terms of baby sizes, it turns out half an inch is like a year. So, but here you can see this 6-month to 12-month-old side. This little guy is much, much wider. So I think this sweater here is going to be more close to this one, which is apparently a 6 to 1 year, so it should fit up to a year. All this goes to say that the sizing, I think, is all over the place. I think I'm more confused than when I started in terms of being confident in what size I was going to knit. But this, I believe, my white one is like not even as wide as this purple one. This purple one though is knit in a cotton yarn, and I find cotton just doesn't have the same, well, it doesn't have the same bounce. I mean, there you can see if I stretch this, which maybe I will stretch this, they are the same width. So in that sense, then maybe I am knitting a 1-year-old version of this, even though it's 2 years old. But I don't know. I wish I could offer some insights after kind of like laying all these projects up against each other and seeing how similar or dissimilar all the sizes are, but I can't. I'm just like more confused than when I was to start with. I think my main takeaway is just knit a size bigger than when you want it to fit, because with a baby or a kid, they will fit into it at some point as they grow, and you don't know how. I think that kids can be all over the map when it comes to sizing and things like that in terms of how they grow. So yeah, bigger is better is my new kind of motto, so that's why I'm going to stick with knitting bigger things, although I might knit another dress for the 3-month-old size. We'll see, because we have a couple weddings this summer, so I have one dress for a wedding, but it would be nice to have another dress for the wedding, or I might sew something. We'll see. But yeah, anyways, it's a mystery. Sizing is a mystery. The last project I wanted to talk about was a kind of spontaneous cast on that I hadn't planned on doing, and this I think is called the Chestnut. Let's see, oh, Hazelnut. It's the Hazelnut by Drops Design. It is a free pattern, and it is going to be a, so when we got our stroller, which was a gift, thank you very much to my in-laws, there are these things called foot muffs, and you can optionally get them for the winter time, and basically they are these, like, they're almost like sleeping bags on the bottom, and then they have little arms, and then they have a little hat. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could make one with my leftover knit collage yarn. So I found this pattern. I searched Ravelry and I found this pattern. It's absolutely adorable. It is very much impossible to read. So I am adapting it to work with super duper bulky yarn. So the pattern recommends a way different needle size, way different number of stitches, and I've been kind of playing around with it. So this is my second attempt that we're looking at. This is where I cast on a lot less stitches. I'm basically just measuring it to make sure it measures as appropriate. And this is my box of leftover yarn that I'm pulling from. So I have like 5 or 6 colors of knit collage yarn, which is this gorgeous 100% wool, and then some of it has these little like trims in it, which just add like a little bit of extra beauty, in my opinion, to the yarn. There's lots of sparkle to it. So I'm going off the pattern a little bit. I'm doing the whole thing in seed stitch, or I was doing the whole thing in seed stitch. Like I said, this is my second time casting on, so it's not, oops, sorry about that. It's not actually designed to be knit in the round. It's designed to be knit back and forth and then seamed, but I don't like seaming. I'd rather knit in the round, so I'm kind of completely, I did a toe up sock cast on, which I think is like Jenny's toe up cast on. I'll link it below and actually figure out which one I used. And then I switched to seed stitch, where every other color I was going from blue to a contrast color, and that's just because I have roughly twice as much blue yarn as I do all these other colors. And I weighed my yarn and I have 260 grams, and I figure that I should need about, or I have 360 grams, sorry, and I figured I should need about 400 for the project. But I also have other bulky yarn that I could use to do just like the button band, and then maybe like some cuffs if I run out of yarn. But turns out, which I should have realized, is that seed stitch is a very consumptuous stitch. It consumes a lot more yarn than like a stockinette, which makes sense because ribbing eats up a lot more yarn than like a stockinette, because stockinette typically it doesn't, I mean, it has no, it's probably like the thinnest stitch, if that makes sense. It's like, it lies the most flat and you don't get any overlap really between the rows, whereas with seed stitch here you can see how small the rows are. So I weighed this and I realized seed stitch is not going to work, so I'm going to actually have to transition. I'm going to rip this out and then knit this in stockinette. And then I'm also going to switch, I think, my how much blue I'm going to use. I think I'd rather do like 4 rows of blue, 1 row of white, 2 rows of pink, 4 rows of blue, like have a little more contrast colors in there. So anyways, this is something that I would like to do, but this is kind of a little bit of a lower priority. This was just like fun because I was going through my yarn stash and I saw all this bulky yarn, which takes up so much space, and I was like, oh, Might be kind of fun to see if I can knit like a little little sleeping bag basically for the baby, and it should be super warm because it's 100% wool. I did go through my stash and I found I do have like, this is the other bulky yarn that I have, which is the Malabrigo Rasta. It's not quite as bulky as the knit collage, nor in my opinion maybe as pretty as the knit collage, but I think it'd be good if I do run out of meterage. I couldn't find, I have this pink color, which is what I would add to that project, not these colors. This purple actually might work a little bit, which I might add. We'll see. But I think I'm going to probably, I should find this, and then when I rip it out, I'm going to add a little bit of this into it just to help with any yardage that I might need. So yeah, that's kind of my current status of knits. As you can see, I've almost gotten to the end of all the baby knits. So, oh, I forgot to talk about what I'm wearing. Oopsies. This is a pattern that I finished a long time ago. I love this pattern. I'm not the only one that loves this pattern. It is extremely popular on Ravelry. So this is the Cumulus Blouse by PetiteKnit. It's a very light, airy sweater. It's typically, she calls for 2 strands of mohair that you hold together, so 2 lace weight yarns, and then you knit it. I think it's on a 4mm, or maybe even, I think it might be a 4mm needle, somewhere between 4 and 6mm needle, so it kind of creates this kind of like very airy feeling. I knit mine using a sport weight yarn that was a Siri alpaca, so I find Siri, for me, it's a little bit softer, not itchy at all. I love this sweater. I didn't make any modifications to it. I would totally knit it again. I actually, very recently in February, I went and extended the sleeves by 2 inches and then redid the whole cast on. I seriously think I should have extended them by like 4 inches, because as you can see, they're still not exactly the longest sleeves in the world, but it's got a great cut to it. It's super light, easy to throw on over everything. It's very lightweight because you're knitting with 2 lace weight yarns. I think the sweater is like maybe, I think it's like 275 grams, something like that. Or no, I think it's like 100 and, sorry, I think I knit it with 50-gram balls and I used less than 3. So I think it's 150 grams, so it's great. It's just a great, very warm too for the weight sweater. I think it's like flattering, enjoyable to knit. So this I knit with the FIBRE Co. Suro yarn, which has a cotton core. I think this yarn is now discontinued. I love the FIBRE Co. yarn. I've used their yarn quite a bit. And I'm using it for that Anemone sweater. So yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Things are going well. I'm planning on switching more to a couple more. I want to start bringing back in some of my adult projects in June. I kind of want to wrap up the Anemone sweater, and then when I do that, get back to some projects I had cast on that are for me. So hopefully that'll be when I go to film at the end of June. Hopefully I'll be talking about those kind of adult size projects as well as kid projects. We can do both. But yeah, hope everyone is doing well and enjoying their knitting, and all the best. See you in a month. Bye.